Hi everyone, this is Allie. I thought today would be a good day to discuss all of the jobs that I've had in the past and what I've learned from each of them. Quickly, I'll mention the bird in the room. This is my pet bird. His name is Wit, and yeah, he's going to be joining us for the video today. Hopefully he's not too much of a distraction. So my first job was as a summer camp counselor. I worked there during the summer. It was just a couple of months, and I worked primarily with younger kids. My task was to take care of them and entertain them throughout the day as the summer program went on. Something that I learned was definitely creativity in thinking of activities for the children, certainly understanding like if anybody had some kind of a concern or any kind of special situation, it was really our responsibility to have patience and understanding for each individual case and for each child. Another thing I just mentioned was patience, a lot of patience. I think anyone that works with children will understand that there's a lot of patience required when you're working with kids. In all, that was a really excellent and fun job to have. I had it when I was in high school, and it was a really nice experience to just kind of start to understand what it is like to have a job and to be paid for the hours that you're spending instead of just volunteer hours. The second job that I had was as a customer service representative. I worked for a utility company, and I was working in customer service, so whenever anybody wanted to set up service or disconnect service, or if they were having some kind of an issue, they would call me. Something that I learned from that job was to really let things roll off your back, like roll off the duck's back. Not to take things so personally. It's really, a lot of times people are going through something, or whether that is actually, in my case, it was like the utilities, so whether their utility isn't working or something went out or whatever, they might be going through things in their life, and they very well might be taking it out on the anonymous person that's on the other line, on the other end of the customer service line. So it's really important not to take things personally and to understand that everyone is going through something in their life, and sometimes those things kind of make their way out directed at somebody that has nothing to do with that, but it's just, that's a human condition, and it's a matter of being patient and understanding that that is the case sometimes, and it's not directed personally at you, and to provide empathy to somebody and to try to help them as much as possible. Oops. The next job that I had was as a course developer for my university. I put together course material that was provided by professors into the website that my university used for the professor-student interface. That job was really fun. The environment that I experienced, everybody was very positive, and everyone was very understanding and listening, and just a really, really good attitude and atmosphere to be a part of. One of the things that I learned in that job that if you're having a good time and if the environment in a workplace is good, time will go by quickly. There's certainly some jobs that I've had that the time goes by slowly, like every day of the week is just dragging and things like that. But if you're able to find an environment and a group of people to work with that really have positive attitude and just are welcoming and pleasant to be around, it could make your time go by quickly, even if you're working on something that you don't necessarily feel super passionate about. For me, that was the case with the course development. It was an interesting job because it went by quickly. It was interesting to learn, like adding in the course material, you start learning some of the things that you're actually starting to populate onto these courses. So it was interesting to get to have a little insight into those courses, I had a wide variety of courses that I would put together. So that was really interesting to get to learn, have a little insight into different courses, and to have that opportunity to work in an environment that's really just excellent and makes you feel good and makes you feel like you want to be there. The job that I had after the course development class, the job was I worked at a wastewater facility, a wastewater processing and treatment facility. That was one of my most favorite jobs. Even though I was working in wastewater treatment, it was stinky and it was a pretty labor-intensive job. I was outside on the plant, like walking around the plant, taking samples and monitoring the system and making sure that it was working or functioning appropriately and as efficiently as possible. So it was a smelly, labor-intensive job, but it was ultimately one of my favorite jobs that I've had so far because I was able to have that outside opportunity, the opportunity to work hands-on with big machinery and make changes and try to maximize efficiency in a hands-on sort of way. That was certainly one of the things that I learned, which I felt was one of my most valuable lessons, was the kind of environment that I want to work in. So I've had, and we'll get into it a little bit, I've had a wide variety of types of jobs, and none of them, but it wasn't, each job that I had wasn't specifically my dream job, you know, but there's always something, and that's the reason for this video, there's always something to be learned and always something to take away, no matter what kind of job it is, and no matter how far away that is from your passion. So in this job, working at the wastewater treatment facility, I wasn't, like, my passion wasn't necessarily to work with wastewater. However, I learned that I love being in the field and I love being in a hands-on type of setting where I can make some small changes, go back and review the changes and see how those affected the system as a whole. That was definitely one of the things that I learned, which were one of my valuable takeaways, which is that I like working in the field, and that's something that I can look forward to or look for in my future jobs, and in the job that I look for, that would be my dream job. The following job that I had was doing research for my university. This research pertained to radioactive material flowing through the groundwater in contaminated sites. It was kind of a two-part process. In the beginning, I was trying to figure out how to create the exact environment or the exact circumstance that was relative to the site that I was researching. So what I'm trying to say is that I was working to synthesize minerals, which means to create minerals in the laboratory setting. That was a very labor-intensive process. It was intense. It required a lot of research, like reading other people's procedures and testing it out, seeing if it worked, seeing what didn't work, seeing like what kind of options we had in terms of creating those environments. And then the second phase of that experiment was actually incorporating the radioactive material into the environment that I had created, the minerals that I had synthesized, and seeing how they reacted. One of the lessons that I learned while working at that job was the importance of reading comprehension. It was a lot of reading scientific papers and trying to get a bunch of different, not exactly perfect fitting information, and kind of like creating a procedure out of a bunch of sections of different procedures. That was definitely an interesting experience, and I think that it is relative to the job. It's like the scenarios that you have in the workplace. Many times you're not going to have a project that is exactly the way that you've done projects in the past. Like, there will always be elements that are slightly different for each project that you're working on or each task that you have. So it's your job to kind of piece together different procedures that you've had in different type of tasks and kind of combining all of those together to get a task done. I think that was a really valuable lesson, and I appreciate the time that I had in the laboratory setting. That was also something that's pretty unique. There are definitely a lot of procedures that need to be followed, and a lot of considerations that need to be taken when you're working with in a laboratory setting with things that are dangerous. Even in a laboratory setting, you always have dangerous chemicals around you, but particularly when you're dealing with radioactive materials. The next job that I had was as a teacher's assistant. So one of my main focuses in that job was helping to develop experiments for the younger classmen from that professor's class. So I would basically go in, follow procedures of an experiment that had already been conducted, and then kind of tweak it to the materials and to the circumstances that were available at the lab that we were working in. It's really surprising how different an experiment can turn out, even just by using different glassware or different like measuring like pipettes and things like that. You really can have a different outcome. So it is important to do that pre-test before you're bringing it or introducing it into a student environment. In that job, I learned the value of preparing before showing something to a group of people who are trying to learn, or any kind of presentation that you might do in the workplace. It's important to prep before so that it runs smoothly when you're like on the day of, so that you can like receive the results that you were expecting to get instead of some unforeseen circumstance popping up. So that job really taught me the importance of being prepared and of testing before going into a presentation or a demonstration in the case of this job for a student group. The following job that I had was in a civil engineering firm. I worked as a designer or an AutoCAD designer technician. The main focus of that job, at least in the beginning, was to revise plans that had been already drawn up. So it was my task to read comments or get comments, or just comments like on the design. They'll tell you, oh, instead of putting this dimension, why do we use this dimension instead? So in the beginning of that job, it was mostly addressing those kind of comments, and little by little I went learning what are the expectations and what a design plan should look like. As I went putting in time with that job, I started learning how to design utilities or how to design a new development. That was certainly a really interesting job to have. There were a lot of different fields or a lot of different elements that went into that design process. And of course, with civil engineering, you have examples all around you, like in homes or in department stores or anything. Basically, you go outside and like a curb and a sidewalk and on a street, everything has to be designed by civil engineers. And so having that job and getting to see the back end of all of that was really interesting, because now I kind of travel through the world and I can see different types of curbs or different kinds of sloping and drainage and things like that. And you start to understand why, and you can understand a little bit better how the world works and how much effort it takes to put together things that you wouldn't otherwise really think about. For example, a sidewalk, or making sure that in a parking lot you don't have a bunch of puddles everywhere, and how can you make the water flow into a drain as opposed to just making a puddle. So just simple things like that. I think that was one of the cooler lessons of that job, was really getting that understanding of everything around us, like in the developed world. You really take for granted, like walking on the sidewalk or parking in a parking lot or what have you, and seeing that back end and seeing how much attention to detail needs to be happening in order to make things flow like that, and to make like the street run parallel. You know, we don't have a street and then there's like a foot drop and then you keep going. That's not, at least in the United States, that's not something that's really experienced too much in terms of development. And it is because there are those regulations in place, and there are a lot of people working really hard every day to make sure that those things look seamless and that it's safe. And that was one of the cooler experiences that I had, was actually seeing everything that you interact with when you walk outside of your house with regards to sidewalks, curbs, streets, drainage, any signage, anything like that, or actual buildings, to actually see the back end of that and understand a little bit further what kind of job it takes to get all of that stuff put together. And then the last job that I'm going to talk about is something that I actually haven't started yet. I will be starting in the new year at a different job, and I can't speak too much about what I've learned so far, but I can tell you guys a little bit about what I can expect. And that is to be doing field work again. As I mentioned earlier, field work seems to be something that I really enjoy. And this new job is going to be a lot more focused into that in the field type of experience, and it's also going to have me working a little bit closer to the environmental side of things in terms of engineering. I haven't mentioned, but I studied engineering in college. That was my area of specialty, and specifically environmental engineering. So really I'm looking for a job that has that outside experience, and this new job that I have, I think, will really provide that for me. I'm going to have the chance to go outside, take samples, be in a hands-on environment, and then on the flip side of that, be able to write reports and get things together and help in getting designs together, having to do with that information that I've collected and implementing that into whatever the project task requires. So I'm really looking forward to that new position. I'll be sure, if you guys would like, I'll be sure to express to you what kind of lessons I've been learning so far. And yeah, let me get Whit here. Oops. Okay, so there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed meeting Whit. He was he was a little bird that he fell from his nest, and then my mom and my sister actually helped to hand raise him, so he's friendly with people. And that's his backstory. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning or getting to know Whit and learning a little bit about what kind of experiences I've learned throughout my different job experiences. Thank you for watching.